Hello everyone, this is Talha Manzoor from the Department of Electrical Engineering at LUMS. And for the next 20 minutes, I will be talking about sedimentation and silt cleaning in waterways. We will begin this talk with the very basic question, what is silt? As can be seen from the various pictures in this slide, silt has a mud-like appearance and consists of dust-like particles of earth, slightly larger than clay and slightly smaller than sand. It is composed of quartz and feldspar and may occur as soil, as suspended sediment in a surface water body, or as soil deposited at the bottom of a waterway. There exist various sources of silt, the most important of which include: firstly, fast flowing water that causes canal banks to erode and settled sediment to move along. Secondly, tiny rock fragments flowing in water which grind against each other, becoming smaller and smaller until they are silt sized. And thirdly, wind transporting rock particles through a canyon or across a landscape, forcing the particles to grind against the canyon walls or one another. Silt has strong impacts on our environment. It can change landscapes, it fills up wetlands and waterways, and also forms river deltas. But not all of the impacts of silt are undesirable. Many species of organisms thrive in slick, silty soil. For example, the beautiful lotus flower shown in this picture. Silty soil is usually more fertile than other types of soil. The Nile River Delta in Egypt is a prime example. A very undesirable effect of silt in transportation or in suspended form is that it acts as a pollutant for those who require clean water. The impact of silt in waterways is the focus of this talk and is what we will discuss from here on. Silt in waterways is extremely undesirable. Slow moving water deposits silt on the canal bed. This reduces channel carrying capacity and results in outlets drawing more water than their allotted share due to raised water levels. Silt may be present in waterways in the following forms: suspended load, which includes silt flowing in water. This silt will eventually settle down on the waterbed if the velocity of the water is low. Bed load, which includes larger particles of silt rolling along the stream bed. And deposited load, which is stationary silt deposited on the stream bed. We will now discuss in turn how each form of silt is measured in practice. For measuring suspended load, measurements may be taken at the source, during transport, or within the affected area. However, source measurements of erosion may be difficult since the lost material may be a fraction of a millimeter per year. Hence, the usual approach taken is to measure the sediment while in transport within the stream. This is commonly achieved by sampling the turbidity of the water. Firstly, the correlation between turbidity and sediment concentration is determined by making a regression developed from water samples that are filtered, dried, and weighed. Then the concentration is multiplied with discharge and integrated over the entire plume. This gives the desired quantity of suspended silt. To distinguish the spill contribution, the background turbidity is subtracted from the spill plume turbidity. This whole process is repeated many times over to get low uncertainty in results. Before we take a look at how bed load is measured, please recall that bed load consists of the larger silt particles rolling along the waterbed. Measuring bed load can be done through direct measurements, which consists of digging a hole in the stream bed and removing and weighing the material that drops in. Bed load may also be estimated from samples caught in a device, which is lowered to the stream bed for a measured amount of time, then brought up for weighing the catch. Silt deposited on the waterbed can be estimated by measuring the depth of the waterbed and comparing with the depth at canal construction. Bed level can be measured by level gauges in combination with differential GPS or leveling apparatus, acoustic bed level detectors, or optical bed level detectors. However, the best and most accurate estimate is achieved after the waterway is dried up through plane surveying techniques. We will discuss this process at length during the remainder of this presentation. The dynamics of silt deposition have also been studied in detail, and researchers in the area have found various mathematical models describing those dynamics. The transition of silt from suspended form to deposited form depends heavily on the turbulence level of the flowing water and something called the settling velocity. Furthermore, it has been found out that deposition occurs when the bed shear stress is less than a critical shear stress value for deposition. Here is a mathematical model for the rate of sedimentation. The objective of showing this model is not to focus on the model itself, but to show that people have conducted a lot of research on this aspect of silt deposition as well. And there exist a lot of detailed studies out there for people who are interested. We now proceed to the second part of the presentation, where we discuss the silt removal process from canal waterways in the Punjab province of Pakistan. Punjab is a major contributor to the agricultural production of Pakistan, and it alone contains 24 main canals, 13 headworks, 2,794 small canals, and 40,000 kilometers of accumulative canal length. The Punjab Irrigation Department first started desilting of the canals under the late Chief Minister Ghulam Haider Wain. Since then, it has become a regular feature, and the Punjab Irrigation and Drainage Authority conducts this campaign annually to clean its canals of silt and other garbage. The process consists of three stages overall: inspection of canal waterbeds, estimation of silt quantity, and removal of silt through dredging. We will look at each stage in detail. We first look at the procedure for the inspection of canal waterbeds. This inspection is carried out to identify potential sites for silt removal along with the extent of siltation that has taken place. These inspections include inspection of distributary, inspection during annual canal closure, inspection during emergency closure, and inspection during special closure after wheat harvest. We now explain each of these inspections in detail. During the inspection of distributary, the technical manager observes unmistakable indicators such as stuck material in bridges and signs of leakage. The technical manager also observes water height and discharge at outlets. Inspections during annual canal closure is carried out after the canal is closed and dried up for the dredging process. In this inspection, walkthrough is carried out to identify silted up reaches. Bed levels are observed every 1000 feet, and areas with silt depths of more than 6 inches are marked for removal. It is during this annual closure that the actual excavation process takes place. Inspection during short emergency closures may be carried out when indicative problems are acute, hence forcing the administration to close the canals for observation. Inspections during special closure after wheat harvest are possible due to the slack water demand shortly after wheat harvest. This closure period is used for observations only, while annual canal closure is used for the actual excavation. Let us now move on to the procedure for silt quantity estimation. As mentioned earlier, the most effective way to estimate the deposited silt on a canal waterbed is by comparing the silted canal profile to the original profile at construction. In Punjab, as in other major parts of the world, an estimate of the canal profile is obtained by the technique of leveling. Leveling is a procedure to establish elevation of required points with respect to a reference. The apparatus consists of a level which is similar to a telescope with additional built-in equipment enabling it to achieve a perfectly horizontal line of sight. The level is placed on a tripod and is used to observe the reading on a graduated level staff placed at a point whose elevation is to be determined. Here is a depiction of how measurements are obtained in leveling. As you can see here, the graduated staff is observed through the crosshairs in the eyepiece of the level. The reading is then subtracted from the elevation of the level itself, which is determined beforehand by observing a point of known elevation, also called the reference or benchmark. Before we move on, we must introduce ourselves with some terminology regarding the level measurements. The backside reading is the reading used to determine the elevation of the instrument itself. Knowing this elevation is extremely important because the elevation of any subsequent points would be obtained by subtracting the staff reading from this elevation. The backsight is taken by placing the staff at a point of known elevation called the benchmark. The height of the instrument is obtained by adding the backsight to the benchmark, and this is always the first reading taken in the leveling procedure. Another type of measurement is the foresight. The foresight is needed when the point whose elevation is required is too far from the benchmark. This means that there is no such point at which the instrument may be placed such that both the benchmark and desired point are visible. Thus, the apparatus is kept at various intermediate stations, starting from the benchmark till the required point is reached. The position of the staff corresponding to an intermediate station is called a change point, and the foresight is the reading of the change point taken from the last position of the leveling apparatus. The last type of reading is the intermediate sight. All sights taken between the backsight and the foresight are intermediate sights. These are the readings taken at points whose elevations are required. The elevation is calculated by subtracting the intermediate sight from the datum or benchmark reading. This slide depicts the leveling procedure as carried out in Punjab. Elevation readings are taken every 1000 feet through a series of change points, backsights, and foresights. The silt quantity is then calculated from the measured depth of silt and the known canal geometry. This calculation is explained next. Here is an example of silt quantity estimation from silt depth for a trapezoidal canal cross section. The first step in calculating the silt volume is to calculate the cross-sectional area of the silt deposit. For this particular canal, it is simply the area formula for a trapezoid, where the only unknown is the top width. This is a function of the silt depth. This cross-section area is calculated for every 1000 feet of the canal. As stated earlier, the waterbed is divided into patches of 1000 feet length. The cross-sectional area is calculated at both ends of each patch, and it is assumed that the cross-sectional area of the whole patch is the average of these two areas. Finally, the silt volume in cubic feet is calculated by multiplying this average cross-sectional area by the patch length, which in this particular case is 1000 feet. After the silt quantity is estimated, comes the cleaning process. This is commonly known as dredging, which is an excavation activity carried out in freshwater areas for the purpose of gathering up bottom sediments and disposing of them at a different location. The excavation is carried out either manually or mechanically. In the manual methodology, farmers and labor work with shovels and ordinary tools, which is extremely time consuming and inefficient. In the mechanical methodology, long reach excavators are used. While they are more efficient and less time consuming, the heavy machinery may disrupt the canal environment. The excavated mass is then placed and leveled off on canal banks in order to strengthen the canal structure. It is also used as a fertilizer for crops. The excavation process for desilting is carried out in different modes. These are self-help by stakeholders, letting out work on contract, deploying farmers' excavation machinery, and deploying work-charged labor. We will look at each one briefly. In desilting done on self-help basis, the excavation is done voluntarily by stakeholders, which includes farmers and their families. However, these volunteers require technical guidance, and so they work under the guidance of technicians, and specimen profiles are excavated every 250 feet or so to avoid over-excavation. This mode of desilting is exhausting and less efficient. Another mode of desilting is letting out work on contract. In this mode, the estimate of silt is required beforehand. In Punjab, this process takes about 3 to 5 weeks. Also in Punjab, there are frequent errors in tender notices, which often delay awarding of contract. This increases closure period, which is inconvenient for farmers. The next mode of desilting is deploying farmers' excavation machinery. This mode requires extra care of technicians because it has been noted that operators of farmer machinery usually tend to over-excavate. In this mode, spontaneous arrangement for excavation are needed to avoid delays in work. The last mode of desilting is deployment of work charged labor. In this mode too, estimate of silt quantity is required beforehand. Labor employed is usually 4.5 men per 1000 cubic feet of silt, which is based on the desire to complete the work within 15 to 20 days. This ends our discussion on the desilting procedure as carried out in Punjab. There are also other technologies available which are being used in other parts of the world. One such technology is laser leveling. In the laser leveling apparatus, the level contains a laser beam which sweeps a horizontal plane. The level staff contains a movable sensor which detects the laser. Thus, there is less reliance on human judgment, which results in a reduction in errors. The leveling procedure is automated to a great extent in laser land leveling. Laser land leveling is leveling the field within certain degree of desired slope using a guided laser beam throughout the field. A controller on the excavator uses the laser beam as reference. This technique is commonly used in Australia, Japan, USA, and India. Much of what has been discussed in this presentation is due largely to Gule Raina from the SciFi lab at LUMS. The desilting procedure in Punjab was surveyed by her as part of a recent internship. This brings us to the end of this presentation. I thank you all for your attention.